The night in the forest was too quiet. Ethan walked carefully through the tall alien trees, his rifle tight in his hands. The air smelled strange like wet stone and something sweet that made his skin crawl. Above him, the moon glowed. An unnatural red, bathing the ground in a dim, bloody light. He had been sent ahead to scout. While the rest of his team waited near the ridge, they told him not to wander too far. But Ethan had never been good at following orders. The mission was simple. Find out if the rumors about the wolf creatures were true. Locals claimed they were fast, deadly, and stronger than any human. But Command wanted proof. Ethan didn't believe in monsters, at least. He didn't until tonight. A sudden howl cut through the silence. It was long, deep, and filled with something that made his blood turn cold. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. Ethan froze. His eyes scanning the shadows between the trees. The fog was thick here, curling around his boots like ghostly fingers. Every step felt heavier, every sound louder. He told himself it was just an animal, maybe some alien version of a wolf. But then, another howl. Closer this time, and then another, from a different direction. They were calling to each other. Hunting, Ethan moved faster. His boots crunched on the damp ground. He kept his rifle ready, his heart beat loud in his ears. But the fog swallowed everything beyond a few meters. It was like walking inside a nightmare. Then, a shadow moved to his left. He turned quickly, nothing. Another shadow darted to his right. He spun again, still nothing. The hairs on his neck stood up. He wasn't alone anymore. Something was circling him. A low growl rolled through the air. It was so close that Ethan's chest tightened. He pointed his rifle into the mist, his finger on the trigger, but before he could fire, something slammed into him from behind. He hit the ground hard, his weapon flying from his hands. The weight on top of him was massive. Claws pressed against his chest. Warm breath touched his face, smelling like wild herbs and blood. Ethan forced his eyes open and saw her. She wasn't fully human. Her face was beautiful but sharp, her skin pale under the red moon. Her hair was silver white, wild and tangled. Her eyes, golden, glowing like twin suns. Fangs peeked from her lips. But her expression was not pure. Rigid was something else, something ancient. She leaned down and sniffed him. Her nose brushed his neck. Ethan's heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. She growled, low and soft. Then she spoke. "Alpha," she said, her voice rough but clear. Ethan's mind froze. He had no idea what she meant. Before he could answer, other howls exploded in the distance, closer, now much closer. The golden-eyed woman's head snapped toward. The sound, her lips curling back to reveal sharp teeth. She looked back at him. Her eyes narrowed. "You belong to me now," she said. Then she stood, grabbed his arm, and yanked him to his feet with impossible strength. "Run," she ordered. Ethan didn't have time to argue. Something huge moved in the fog behind them, the sound of claws tearing the earth. The woman pulled him through the forest, moving faster than any human could. Branches whipped past. The ground blurred under his feet. The howls grew louder, too many to count. They were being chased. Ethan stumbled, his lungs burning. What are you?" He gasped. She didn't answer. Her grip tightened. And she dragged him forward like a child. The growls behind them turned into thunderous footsteps. Whatever was chasing them was getting closer. They reached a narrow gap between two giant trees. She shoved him through first, then turned to face the darkness. Ethan spun back to help her, but stopped. From the shadows emerged a massive shape, bigger than a bear, its eyes glowing red, its fur black as midnight. It snarled. Revealing teeth like knives, the silver-haired woman growled back, not afraid, angry. Her voice was deep and commanding. "This one is mine," she said. The monster hesitated, then backed away slowly, melting into the mist. Ethan stared, breathing hard. She turned to him. Her golden eyes burned in the moonlight. "You're safe. For now," she said. Then she pointed toward a dark cave ahead, inside. "Before the others come." Ethan followed, still in shock. He didn't know what she was. He didn't know why she called him Alpha. But he knew one thing. This night was only the beginning. The Claymathon woke to the sound of crackling fire. The cave was dim, its walls glowing orange from the flames. The air was warmer here, carrying the scent of smoke and something sweet, almost like flowers. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then his eyes landed on her, the silver-haired woman with golden eyes, sitting on the other side of the fire, watching him like a predator. His heart kicked in his chest. Last night's memories came back in flashes. The forest, the howls, the black monster, her hand dragging him through the fog. He sat up quickly, his hand going for his rifle, but it wasn't there. Instead, a heavy fur cloak was draped over him. It was warm, softer than anything he'd ever touched. "You are alive," she said simply. Her voice was calm, but there was something behind authority control. Ethan swallowed, his throat dry. What are you?" She tilted her head, as if surprised by the question. "I am Liara, daughter of the Red Moon," she said. "And you are mine." Ethan blinked. "Yours? What does that mean?" Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. "In my pack, to claim someone is to make them part of you. Protected, bound. No one can harm you without facing me." She leaned forward, her golden eyes sharp as blades. "You are my alpha now," Ethan laughed, though it came out shaky. "I think you've got the wrong guy. I'm not whatever you think I am." But Liara didn't look amused. Her tone turned low, almost a growl. "You stood your ground when I attacked. You didn't beg. You didn't run. The Blood Moon chose you." She pointed to a faint mark on his neck. He hadn't noticed it before. A strange glowing crescent burned into his skin. "It is the mark of the Alpha Bond," she said. "It will not fade." Ethan's stomach twisted. "So what, you bite me, and now I'm part of your wolf club?" Her eyes flashed. "We are not wolves. We are Varathi. Our alpha leads the pack in battle, in life, in death." She stood, towering over him despite her slender frame. "And you must prove you are worthy." Before Ethan could respond, a deep voice rumbled from the cave entrance. To massive figures stepped inside Dalian wolfmen, their silver fur streaked with scars. They looked at Ethan with pure hatred. One snarled, "This is the Alpha. A human. This is an insult to the pack." Ethan stood slowly, every muscle tense. Lyra's voice cut through the growls. He was chosen. Any who doubt it may challenge him. The larger wolf stepped forward, towering over Ethan. "I challenge," he growled, his eyes glowing like molten steel. Ethan realized this wasn't just a threat. This was a fight to the death. Liara looked at Ethan, her gaze unreadable. "If you win, the pack will respect you," she said. "If you lose, you die." Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. He didn't have claws or fangs. No supernatural speed, but he did have his mind. And he knew one thing: running wasn't an option. "Fine," he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. "Let's get this over with." The pack gathered outside the cave, forming a wide circle under the red moon. The challenger stepped forward, cracking his neck, his claws flexing. Ethan took a deep breath, scanning the ground. Loose dirt, a few rocks, some roots. No weapons, just his hands and his brain. The fight began with a roar. The wolf lunged, swinging a clawed hand. Ethan ducked, rolling to the side. He grabbed a handful of dirt and flung it into the wolf's eyes. The beast snarled, shaking his head. Ethan didn't wait. He rushed forward and slammed his shoulder into the wolf's gut. Using his weight to topple him, the crowd gasped. The wolf recovered fast, grabbing Ethan's arm and throwing him hard into the ground. Pain shot through his ribs. The beast charged again. Ethan rolled toward a root sticking out of the ground. Snapping it free, it wasn't much, but it was sharp at one end. When the wolf lunged, Ethan sidestepped and jammed the root into his opponent's leg. The beast howled in pain. Staggering, Ethan used the moment to leap on his back, rapping. An arm around his neck, he squeezed with every ounce of strength, ignoring the claws tearing at his side. Finally, the wolf collapsed, his breathing ragged. Ethan stood over him, chest heaving. He didn't kill him. He didn't need to. Instead, he stepped back, giving the wolf a chance to rise. The crowd was silent, their eyes shifting between Ethan and Liara. The wolf got to his knees, his head bowed. "You? Our alpha?" he growled reluctantly. Lyra's lips curled into the faintest smile. She stepped beside Ethan, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You see?" she whispered. "The blood moon never chooses wrong." Ethan looked at the faces around. Some respectful, others still filled with doubt. He knew this wasn't the end. This was just the first test, and whatever came next would be worse. The first challenge the next day began with the sound of drums. Ethan woke inside the cave to see Liara already standing at the entrance, her silver hair glinting in the morning light. The air was colder than before, carrying a strange scent smoke, and something sharp, like iron, when he stepped outside. The whole pack was gathered in a wide circle. Waiting, Liara turned to him, her golden eyes steady. "Last night was only the beginning," she said. "You beat one warrior, but the alpha of the Varathi must pass the blood trials." Ethan frowned. "Trials? As in, more fights?" She nodded. 3 trials. Strength, instinct, and loyalty. Fail any, and you lose the title. Her tone left no doubt. Losing didn't just mean shame. It meant death, before Ethan could argue. A deep voice boomed. From the center of the circle, it was the elder of the pack, an old wolf with fur like snow and eyes like burning coals. "The first trial begins," the elder declared. "The alpha must face the bonebreaker." The crowd parted. From the shadows stepped a creature unlike the others. It was bigger, broader. With black fur streaked in red scars, its jaw was heavy, its claws thick and chipped from years of battle. It grinned at Ethan, showing teeth as long as knives. Lyra's voice dropped low. "Do not try to match his strength. You will lose." Ethan swallowed. "Any advice?" Her lips curled slightly. "Win." The bonebreaker stepped forward, his voice a deep rumble, a human alpha. "I will enjoy this." The elder raised his hand. "Begin." The giant moved first, charging like a storm. Ethan barely dodged, feeling the rush of air as claws tore through where he had been standing. The ground shook under the creature's weight. Ethan knew he couldn't take a direct hit, not even once. The crowd roared as the bonebreaker attacked again, this time swiping. Low, Ethan jumped back. Scanning the ground, he spotted a patch of loose dirt and a jagged rock the size of his hand. He grabbed the rock just as the beast lunged. At the last moment, Ethan ducked under its arm and slammed the rock into its knee. The bonebreaker roared in pain. Stumbling, Ethan used the opening to move behind him, kicking the back of his legs. The giant dropped to one knee, but then his huge arm swung back. Catching Ethan across the ribs, the blow knocked the air from his lungs. Sending him rolling across the dirt, pain burned through his side. The crowd jeered, some shouting for the fight to end. Ethan forced himself up, blood dripping from his lip. He wasn't done. The bonebreaker came again, this time slower. Testing him, Ethan circled, breathing hard. His mind working fast. He remembered the old training saying, If you can't beat them head-on, use the ground beneath them. When the beast charged one final time, Ethan sidestepped at the last second, but instead of running, he grabbed its arm and pulled, guiding its massive weight into the loose dirt patch. The ground gave way, the bone breaker's foot sinking deep. In that moment of imbalance, Ethan jumped, wrapping his arms around the creature's thick neck. The giant roared, thrashing, but Ethan squeezed with everything he had. He aimed for the throat, pressing hard until the beast's movements slowed. Finally, the bone breaker collapsed face first into the dirt, breathing heavy but still alive. The crowd was silent. Ethan stood over his fallen opponent, chest heaving. He stepped back. Letting the bone breaker rise on his own, the giant got to his knees, eyes locked on Ethan. Then he bowed his head. "You fought with the mind of a true alpha," he said. The crowd erupted into howls, some of respect, some of anger. Lyra stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. "The first trial is past," she said, "but the next will test more than your strength." Ethan looked at her, his breathing still. "Rough, what's next?" Her golden eyes darkened. "Instinct. You will face the wilds alone. No weapons, no allies. Survive until the blood moon rises again." Ethan's stomach sank. "How long is that?" 3 nights, she said. "And if you fail, the forest will eat you before the pack ever sees your body again." Ethan knew she wasn't exaggerating. The forest had already shown him its monsters, but this time, he wouldn't have Lyra's hand pulling him to safety. This time, he'd be alone. The threat from outside the forest was alive with danger. Ethan moved carefully through the tall alien trees, the shadows stretching like claws across the ground. It had been only a few hours since the start of the second trial, but he already felt the weight of the forest pressing in on him. No weapons, no allies, only his bare hands and whatever he could find. Every sound made him tense, the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, the distant screech of something that didn't sound friendly. He had already climbed 2 trees to avoid strange insect-like creatures with too many legs and teeth. The air smelled damp and metallic, like rain mixed with blood. Ethan knew he had to survive 3 nights until the blood moon rose again. He had been focusing on finding water, shelter, and maybe some kind of weapon, but as the sun dipped lower, he heard something new, a low hum. It was mechanical, unnatural for this place. He froze, crouching low behind a twisted tree. Through the fog, he saw them, humans, 3 soldiers in black armor. Moving cautiously but heavily armed, Ethan's stomach dropped. They weren't part of his original team. Their armor bore a different insignia: private military, probably mercenaries. They were here for something, and Ethan had a bad feeling he knew what. He stayed hidden, listening. One of the soldiers spoke into a comm device. "Command, we've located the coordinates. The pack's den is a few clicks east. Orders." Another voice crackled through, same as before. "Kill them all. Bring the Alpha's head." Ethan's pulse spiked. They were here for Lyra, the pack, and if they thought he was the Alpha, then they were hunting him too. He could run, disappear into the forest. But his mind replayed the look in Lyra's eyes when she had dragged him out of danger that first night. The way she stood beside him after the first trial. She had claimed him protected him if he left her and the pack to die. What kind of alpha would he be? Ethan's jaw tightened. No, he wasn't running. He began shadowing the soldiers, moving silently from tree to tree. He couldn't fight them head-on, not without weapons, but he could slow them down. He started marking their path, noting weak spots in the terrain, loose ground, fallen logs, anything he could use. As night fell, the fog thickened. The soldiers switched on helmet lights, cutting narrow beams through the darkness. They didn't notice the way Ethan moved just beyond their vision. He waited until they passed a narrow stretch between 2 massive roots. Then he kicked loose a vine-wrapped branch, sending it crashing down. It didn't hit them, but it startled them enough to make one stumble into a hidden pool of mud. The leader cursed, pulling him out. "Stay sharp." "We're close." Ethan slipped away before they could spot him. He had to reach Liara before they did. The den was east. He could get there faster if he cut through the ridge of bones. It was risky, filled with predators and unstable cliffs. But it was the only way. The ridge was as bad as the name suggested. Jagged white rock jutted from the ground like broken teeth. Strange skeletal remains of massive creatures lay half buried in the dirt. The wind howled between the stone pillars, carrying distant growls. Ethan moved fast, using the rocks for cover halfway across. He spotted movement ahead, two glowing red eyes staring right at him. It was one of the black-furred beasts, like the one Liara had faced on the first night. Its lips curled back, revealing long, wet fangs. Ethan backed away slowly, his mind racing for a plan. Then gunfire erupted behind him. The soldiers had arrived, and the beast turned toward the noise. It roared and charged at them, forcing them to open fire. Ethan didn't waste the distraction. He ran, pushing himself harder. By the time he reached the edge of the ridge, the forest ahead glowed faintly with the light of the pack's fires. But so did the beams of the soldiers' helmets. They were still coming. Ethan broke into a sprint, bursting into the den clearing. Wolves rose to their feet, growling at his sudden arrival. Liara appeared, her golden eyes sharp. "What are you doing here? You should be in the trial." Ethan grabbed her arm, breathless. "Forget the trial. Humans are coming. Armed. They want your head." The pack erupted in snarls and shouts. Lyra's expression hardened. "How many?" "3, Ethan said, "but they have tech and guns." "If they find this place, they won't," she cut in, her voice low and dangerous. She turned to the pack, barking orders in her own language. Warriors grabbed weapons, others vanished into the trees. Then she looked at Ethan. "You warned." "US. That is what an alpha does." Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but the first shot rang out. The fight had come to them. Blood on the moon, the gunshot echoed through the trees. The pack reacted instantly. Warriors leaped into the shadows. Snarls and growls rippling through the night. The red moon hung above like an omen, staining the clearing in blood-colored light. Ethan's heart pounded as he grabbed a fallen spear from the ground. He wasn't trained to fight alongside alien werewolves. But he wasn't about to stand back. Liara was already moving, her silver hair whipping behind her as she sprinted toward. The sound of gunfire. Ethan followed close, weaving between massive roots and leaping over rocks. The air smelled sharp ozone from gunpowder, mixed with the earthy scent of the forest. They broke through the trees just as the mercenaries came into view. 3 black armored figures, weapons blazing, beams from their helmet, lights cutting. Through the fog, the pack's warriors darted in and out of the mist, their speed and agility making them hard targets. But the soldiers were disciplined at shot, calculated, each move precise. Ethan ducked as a bullet ripped past his head, embedding into a tree with a sharp crack. "Stay low." Liara barked, her voice fierce. Then she lunged, claws flashing. Tackling one soldier to the ground, Ethan's instincts kicked in. One of the mercenaries turned toward her. Rifle raised, Ethan grabbed a heavy branch from the ground and swung. With everything he had, the branch connected with the soldier's helmet, sending him sprawling. Before he could recover, Ethan kicked the rifle away and slammed the branch down again. The soldier went still, groaning. But Ethan didn't wait. He rolled to the side as another burst of gunfire tore through where he had been. The third soldier was advancing, weapon aimed directly at him. Ethan's breath caught. He had no cover. Then a blur of silver and gold slammed into the attacker. Liara, her fangs bared, ripping the rifle from his hands and tossing it aside. Like trash, but in the chaos, the first soldier recovered. Pulling a small device from his belt, Ethan recognized it instantly a grenade, Liara. He shouted without thinking. He sprinted forward, tackling the soldier's arm just as he activated it. The grenade slipped from his grip and rolled into the dirt. Ethan shoved the man back and dove behind a tree. The explosion tore through the clearing, shaking the ground. The shockwave knocked Ethan to his side. His ears ringing, smoke filled the air, making it hard to see. Through the haze, he saw the remaining soldiers retreating. One of them shouted into a comm, "Target not. Secured requesting reinforcements." Ethan's stomach sank. This wasn't over. If they brought more, the pack wouldn't stand a chance. Liara limped toward him, her leg bleeding from shrapnel. "You fought well," she said, her voice softer now, "but they will come back in. Greater numbers. We must move the pack." Ethan glanced toward the den. "What about the pups?" "The elders," her eyes darkened. "They go first. The warriors will cover them. But..." She hesitated, looking at him in a way that made his chest tighten. "I need you to lead one group to the hidden valley. Only you know human tactics well. Enough to avoid their search." Ethan blinked. "You trust me with that?" "You are Alpha," she said simply. Her voice left no room for doubt. The next hour was a blur of movement. Ethan gathered a small group 3 young warriors, an elder, and 2 mothers with pups. They moved quickly through the forest. Keeping to the shadows, every snap of a twig made Ethan's grip tighten on his spear. Halfway to the valley, the sound of boots and metal echoed through the trees. A new squad of soldiers armed with heavier weapons. Ethan's mind raced. If they ran straight, they'd be caught. He needed to mislead them. "Split up," he whispered to the group. "Follow the creek east. Stay low. I'll draw them away." One of the young warriors growled, "You can't face them alone." Ethan smirked faintly. "Despite the danger, I'm not planning to fight. Distract." Before anyone could stop him, he bolted west, making as much noise as he could, snapping branches, kicking up dirt. The soldiers took the bait instantly, their lights swinging toward him. "Contact! Pursue!" One shouted. Ethan ran until his lungs burned. Then he dove into a narrow ravine, pressing himself against the cold stone. The soldiers rushed past overhead, unaware he was just meters below. When their footsteps faded, Ethan climbed out and circled back toward the group. They had made it safely to the edge of the valley. The elders and pups were being helped down the slope. Liara was there, her golden eyes locking onto him the moment she saw him. "You live," she said, relief flashing in her gaze before she masked it with her usual sternness. Ethan grinned tiredly, disappointed. She shook her head. "No." Proud. But before they could rest, a howl rose in the distance, deep, loud, and furious. The pack froze. It wasn't a wolf, and it wasn't human. Something else had been drawn to the blood and chaos, and it was coming their way. The final stand. Howl rolled through the valley like thunder. It was deep enough to make the ground tremble. Ethan felt it in his chest, an unnatural vibration that sent shivers down his spine. The pack shifted uneasily, the warriors raising their spears and axes. Even Liara's golden eyes narrowed. Whatever was coming wasn't ordinary prey or predator. From the tree line, a massive shadow emerged. At first, it looked like a giant wolf, but as it stepped into the red moonlight, Ethan saw the truth. Its body was covered in black, chitin-like armor, its head a mix of beast and insect. 4 burning eyes glowed red, and its jaws split sideways, revealing rows of teeth. Liara's voice was low, urgent, a blood spawn. "It hunts by smell and sound. Nothing in this forest can kill it. Except fire." Ethan's stomach tightened. The pack had no guns left, and only a few torches, hardly enough to drive something this big away. But they couldn't run, the elders. and pups were still in the valley, too slow to escape. The blood spawn roared, charging with terrifying speed. The warriors met it head-on. Striking with spears and axes, their weapons scraped against its armor but barely pierced it. The beast swatted one fighter aside like a rag doll, sending him crashing into a tree. Fall back. Liara barked. The warriors obeyed, regrouping near the valley's edge. Ethan's mind raced. Fire was the only way. He remembered the old hunting trick, trapping predators in a natural choke point, then burning them out. Liara, he called. There's a narrow pass east of here. If we lure it in, we can trap it with flames. Her eyes searched his for a moment, then she nodded. Do it. I'll hold it here. No, Ethan said sharply. You get the pack to safety. I'll lead it. Her lips pulled back slightly, not in anger, but something like disbelief. That's suicide. Ethan managed a crooked smile. Better me than the pups. Before she could argue, the blood spawn lunged again. Ethan grabbed a torch from a nearby warrior and hurled it at the beast's face. The flames didn't hurt it much, but it got its attention. Its 4 glowing eyes locked onto him. Come on, ugly, Ethan muttered, turning and sprinting toward the east pass. The ground shook as the monster followed. Ethan could feel the heat of its breath on his back. He wove between trees, leaping over roots, trying to keep just ahead of its snapping jaws. Branches whipped at his face. His lungs burned, but he didn't dare slow. At last, the trees opened into a narrow gap between 2 massive cliffs. This was it? Ethan skidded to a stop, grabbing a bundle of dry branches he had noticed earlier during scouting. He piled them quickly, striking flint from his pocket until sparks caught. The flames licked upward just as the blood spawn charged into the pass. Ethan darted past the burning branches, deeper into the choke point. The beast followed, its massive bodies scraping the walls of the cliffs. More branches, more fire. He set them ablaze, one by one. The heat began to grow, the flames reflecting off the black armor of the creature. But it didn't stop. It lunged, claws swiping. One barely missing Ethan's head. He stumbled backward, and his foot slipped on loose rock, sending him crashing to the ground. The blood spawn loomed over him, its jaws opening wide. Then an arrow of fire shot through the air and struck the beast's neck. It screeched, jerking back. Ethan looked up to see Liara at the cliff's edge, bow in hand, her silver hair glowing in the firelight. I told you, she shouted. We fight together. She leaped down, landing beside him. Together. They pushed the last of the burning debris into the narrow path, sealing the blood spawn inside. The heat rose quickly, smoke choking the air. The monster thrashed, but the flames climbed its armored body, slipping into the cracks. Its roars turned to high-pitched screams before finally fading when it was over. The fire crackled in the silence. Ethan dropped to one knee, breathing hard. Liara stood over him, her golden eyes softer now. You could have died, she said. Quietly, so could you, he replied. They stared at each other for a long moment, the heat from the fire warming their faces. Finally, Liara placed her hand on his shoulder. The blood spawn is dead. The pack is safe. You have done what no alpha before you has done, protected us from both man and monster. Ethan gave a tired smile. Guess I'm starting to believe I'm alpha after all. But in the back of his mind, he knew killing the blood spawn and fighting off the mercenaries wouldn't end this. More threats would come, and when they did, he'd have to stand in front of them again, because that's what an alpha does. Alpha of 2 worlds. The valley was quiet again. The fires from the blood spawn fight had died down to glowing embers. Smoke curled lazily into the red-tinted night sky. The pack was gathered in a wide circle, the elders seated at the center. The pups curled close to their mothers. They were safe because Ethan had made sure of it. Ethan sat on a large rock at the edge of the gathering, his ribs still aching from the battles of the past days. He wasn't used to the stares some filled with respect, others with disbelief. But he could feel it, a shift in the air. They were no longer seeing him as an intruder. They were starting to see him as Alpha. Liara approached silently, her silver hair gleaming in the moonlight. In her hands, she carried a carved piece of black stone. Shaped like a fang, she stood before him, her golden eyes locked on his. "Kneel," she said. Ethan hesitated. "I'm not one of you." Her voice softened. "You are more than one of us. You are Alpha of two worlds." Something in her tone made his chest tighten. Slowly, he knelt, the cool earth pressing against his knees. Liara placed the black fang around his neck, the leather cord warm from her hands. "This is the mark of blood and moon," she said, her voice carrying over the silent pack. "It means you are bound to the Varathi until your last breath. You lead us in battle, in life, and in death." The warriors howled, the sound echoing off the cliffs. Ethan felt the vibration of it in his bones. For the first time, it didn't feel strained. It felt right. When the ceremony ended, the pack began to move again, tending to the wounded, watching. The boarders Ethan and Liara walked together toward the edge of the valley. The red moon hung low, casting long shadows over the trees. "You didn't have to give me this," Ethan said, touching the black fang at his chest. Lyra's lips curled into a faint smile. "You didn't have to save my pack. You didn't have to stand between us and your own kind. But you did." She stopped, turning to face him fully. "In Varathi law, an alpha may choose a mate. I choose you." Ethan froze. The words hit him harder than any blow. "Liara, you don't have to." Her golden eyes softened in a way he hadn't seen before. "This is not about debt. This is about bond. I claimed you that first night because the blood moon told me you were mine. Now I know it wasn't just instinct. It was truth." Ethan didn't know what to say. Part of him still felt like an outsider, but another part deeper, quieter knew he had already chosen her the moment he turned back to warn the pack about the mercenaries. Before he could speak, a faint rumble sounded in the distance. Not the howl of a predator engines. Ethan's jaw tightened. "There. Coming back," he said. Liara looked toward the horizon. "Where faint lights glowed in the mist, they will never stop," she said. "Your people will see us as monsters, just as my pack saw you as prey. But now, you are both." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then I guess it's my job to make them see we can be more than enemies." That night, he stood at the cliff's edge, overlooking the forest. The pack had moved deeper into the valley, their fires hidden from the sky. Ethan's mind turned over 100 plans how to strengthen the borders, how to keep the mercenaries out, how to feed everyone when winter came. Liara joined him, her presence quiet but solid. "You are thinking too much," she said. "I'm thinking about how to keep everyone alive," he replied. She stepped closer, until her shoulder brushed his. "An alpha protects with claws and fangs. Yes, but also with heart," she said. "Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, you lead." Ethan let out a slow breath. The idea of rest seemed impossible. But for the first time in days, he felt the tightness in his chest ease. He glanced at her, the silver of her hair glowing against the red moon. "You're not so bad for a werewolf," he teased. She smirked. "And you're not so bad for a human?" They stood together, watching the horizon until the first light of dawn began to push back the shadows. The red moon faded, and with it, the tension in the air seemed to ease. For now, the pack was safe. For now, the valley was theirs. Ethan knew threats would come again, humans, monsters, things he hadn't even imagined yet. But he also knew he wouldn't face them alone. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He wasn't just a human. He was Alpha of two worlds, and whatever came next, he would meet it with claws, cunning, and the family he'd found under the blood moon.